Hi everyone, this is Shannon Williams and welcome to today's Rancher Meetup. Today we are going to be talking about Kubernetes environments in Rancher. So I'm excited to see that we're having, I think, record registration for this meetup. Obviously it's a really exciting topic. A lot of people are interested in learning about. And we're seeing appropriately the number of registrations is hundreds and hundreds. I think we're into over 400 plus people that are signed up to attend today. So hopefully we'll have some great questions and a great discussion as always. Just by way of quick introduction, I'm Shannon Williams. I host these meetups every month with my colleague Darren Shepard. Darren, you want to say hi?
Hello guys, excited to be here.
Darren and I are two of the founders here at Rancher, and we've been, it's probably maybe our 8th or 10th or 12th monthly meetup, but we always enjoy these sessions. They give us a chance to get a ton of feedback, and people ask great questions. We usually try to demonstrate something interesting, and hopefully give you some insights into some of the interesting stuff going on in the container space. So just before we get started, a couple things that we always try to do to make sure everyone is aware of kind of the format of these sessions. We really do look at these as meetups and not webinars. We use GoToWebinar, and it's not exactly the perfect thing for what we're trying to accomplish, but it helps get people involved reasonably well. But the reason we call this a meetup is we really don't try to prescribe a very fixed, tight agenda or time frame for these events. We go until everyone, we've covered the topic, we've answered all the questions. We record the whole session, so if for any reason you have to drop off or it gets late or you have a meeting, feel free to come back and see the rest of the session. The other big thing is it's meant to be a conversation. So we ask you guys to fire away with your questions. If you don't know GoToWebinar all that well, if you open up the little side panel, you'll see a section called questions, and if you just fire questions away, Darren and I will be answering them. We'll be reading them out loud often and sort of engaging them into the discussion. We'll also open up mics sometimes if people want to ask a question, so feel free to mention, hey, I'd like to ask a question, and I'm happy to have you open my lineup. We can do that. So questions are welcome. It's meant to be a discussion. Really, there's no bad questions. Anything you want to discuss is okay. We try to sort of keep the questions in the flow of the presentations, especially for the beginning of the section, so we can get through a reasonable amount of the content quickly. But even if we don't answer your question for 10 or 20 minutes while we're talking on something, it probably means we'll either be talking about that same topic in a few minutes, or we'll circle back and try to answer it during, once we're past a topic. So the other side of this is these are really not meant to be marketing pitches, and we just demo in these a lot. So the expectation, I think we always demo one or two different things, and we're happy to demo anything that we can on the fly. So if you have something you'd like to see, could be related to to something even outside the topic of today's meetup, that's fine. I just say all that in that because all this is live, we don't record any videos. This is not a bunch of scanned screenshots. It's all real live stuff. Sometimes things break. Sometimes stuff doesn't load. Sometimes we fat finger the commands. So be patient. And if you see that we're messing something up, by all means, let us know. Shout it out on the questions. It's more than once somebody has helped us figure out what the hell we're doing. So consider this a community of people who are obviously very passionate about Docker, about containers, about using this stuff to transform the way we build applications. So all that said, the way we do make this a community is we all kind of chat during the session as much as possible on Twitter. Obviously, it's a little harder for Darren and I to do that while we're chatting and talking and presenting. But we love it when you guys share your pictures, show us what you're doing. So if you don't mind, kind of introduce yourself to the group, take a photo, show us how you do the meetup. I love these every month. Are one of my favorite things is seeing some of your faces, people I know from the community or know from these meetups, and what you look like and where you work and how you participate. So fire away, show us what you're doing and how you live, and just hashtag everything with Rancher Meetup, and we'll see it. Okay, all that done, let's jump into the content. Today's focus is going to be about talking about Kubernetes and Kubernetes environments in Rancher. And I'm going to be spending probably about 10 minutes or so kind of outlining a little bit of how we've approached this process from a Rancher perspective and what led us to it, how we're looking at Kubernetes environments from a Rancher, within the Rancher platform. And then Darren is going to take over, and he is going to go through a demo and show you how to launch a Kubernetes environment. He'll set up an application, and we'll take your questions. So we've got a lot to cover, so we're trying to keep it pretty tight today. But by all means, fire away if there's something you'd like to see. Everything we're going to be demoing today will be coming out in the next couple weeks. So you're looking at sort of pre-release stuff. I think you should see, an early alpha release candidate with all the functionality that we're going to demo today in the next few days or early next week. So bear with us, and we'll certainly be letting everybody know when this stuff goes live and posting it to our normal, Rancher docs and GitHub account. So without any further ado, I just want to take a minute or two to kind of explain who Rancher is, because just for those of you who are new, Rancher is a software company. We build open source software that is geared on making it easy for people to build a full stack container management platform. And we have two main products: Rancher, which is the one we're going to talk about mostly today, which is a software platform that is open source. It's free. People use it to build and deploy their own container services for everything from small, local, personal environments to some of the biggest companies in the world. We'll be talking a little bit about how it works and going to more of it today. And then Rancher OS is our other main project, which is a micro Linux distro built with Docker as the core of it. It's about a 20 or 30 megabyte OS that is really designed from the ground up to run containers, and both of these are very popular, and we're really excited about both of these pieces of technology. From a Rancher side, though, because we're talking about more of that, I did just want to kind of outline, how does Rancher work? Yeah, Rancher basically is software that you deploy in the cloud or on your own machines. You can start it as simply a container or build it out as a distributed system, but fundamentally it's a management stack, and it allows you to take compute nodes from any cloud or physical machine or virtual machine and combine them into clusters or environments that can be used to provision your container-based applications on. What Rancher does, though, is we implement all of the networking and storage services, the access control, the operational management, the platform, the UI around that, and we allow you to deploy your applications on there. Just recently, we've been implementing Kubernetes and Swarm as orchestration and scheduling options within the Rancher platform. Is something that we've been really excited about. So today we're going to be talking a lot about Kubernetes. Probably in a month or so we'll have a similar meetup where we talk about the work we're doing on Swarm and show you how to deploy a Swarm environment. But at the core, what Rancher does is it takes these sort of kernels and allows you to deploy them in a distributed multi-tenant, automated way, manages them, and then allows for, simple application provisioning from things like an application catalog onto it. So if you want to bring up your applications or plug in your CI/CD systems or whatever it is that you're going to use to tell Rancher how to deploy your applications, we expose all the hooks and stuff to allow you to do that. So today's session is going to be talking about that Kubernetes box in the middle, and how over the last 3 or 4 months we've taken Kubernetes and really done a lot of work to make it a core component of Rancher, and we're really excited about this. It's definitely been an initiative that we've had the whole team at different levels work on, from our UI team to our back-end team to obviously the developers who worked on the core system. But for those who aren't familiar, I think hopefully most of you are familiar with Kubernetes, at least to some level as a concept. But Kubernetes is another open source project that's started by Google, and it's a cluster management solution. It allows you to create clusters of hosts and then deploy applications upon them using a standard framework. It was started about a year and a half ago. It's around the same time as Rancher. It's become very popular. In addition to Google, an enormous number of software companies are contributing or leveraging Kubernetes and incorporating it, from Red Hat to IBM to CoreOS to many others. And as it's grown in popularity, it's also grown in capability. It's become a more and more powerful platform for deploying things. The current GA version, I believe, is 1.1, but the latest version in beta is 1.2. That's what we'll be showing mostly today. There's some cool features in there, and that will be the first version that Rancher supports when we GA Rancher in the next month or so. The thing about Kubernetes that makes it really interesting is it's growing on its own at a really fast clip, and it's a very powerful platform for managing applications. Its capabilities around things like deploying highly resilient systems is really good. Its ability to do jobs and to execute relatively complex applications in a reliable, distributed way is what makes it really appealing, but also its standardization. I mean, I think the thing that's exciting about Kubernetes is it looks like something that has a good chance to catch on and become a standard, along with Docker Swarm, of how we talk about clustering. And it's very different than Docker Swarm. It's a very different tool, but it solves a lot of the same problems. So for us, it's a really useful piece of technology. You can learn a ton about Kubernetes online. You can just go to Kubernetes.io, which is the website. There's some great slide shares out there that explain a lot of the concepts. I am going to do a very cursory level explanation of some of what makes up Kubernetes and how we've approached it from a Rancher perspective, but by no means is this a master class in Kubernetes. I would highly, if you're going to be deploying your applications in Kubernetes, there's so many great pieces of resource out there. Happy to answer your questions as well, but I think it would definitely be worthwhile visiting Kubernetes.io and learning a bit more about that. What really drove us, though, is we wanted to, as we consumed Kubernetes and made it a component of the Rancher platform, we really wanted to keep as much as possible a native Kubernetes experience. We weren't really interested in wrapping it or modifying it heavily. We wanted to make it a pure distribution of Kubernetes that was part of Rancher. So the way that we've done that is there's a concept in Rancher of environments, which up until now have basically been just the way you segmented a group of cluster of hosts into an isolated access control group. Beginning with the next upcoming release of Rancher, you'll actually start to have 3 different options for clustering those hosts. You can continue to use Rancher's native cattle format, which is, if you're using Rancher today, that's the way you would use all of the current clustering and orchestration, Docker Compose, Rancher Compose, all those tools. But alternately, you could choose to deploy a Kubernetes environment or a swarm environment. With these environments, what Rancher's doing is we manage everything about deploying these clusters, and we allow you to deploy as many of them as you like. So you can deploy as many Kubernetes environments as you want. We then implement Rancher access control around these Kubernetes environments, so you can define who can access them. We create a UI for Kubernetes so that you can see what's happening inside your cluster and execute against it directly from the Rancher UI. And we implement a lot of the sort of Rancher functionality you're probably know and like if you're using it, such as cross-zone networking, cross-cloud, cross-data center networking. We use our node provisioning that leverages Docker Machine, and we make all of the Rancher infrastructure services like our load balancer, our multi-host networking, our application catalog, our persistent storage services, our metadata service, all of these available throughout the Kubernetes cluster. So we solve DNS, we solve a lot of the problems that we have to solve for Rancher. We now implement that same stuff around Kubernetes. So it standardizes a lot of the back-end function, but leaves you with a really clean implementation of Kubernetes to leverage. Once you've said, okay, give me a Kubernetes environment, what Darren will show you is what happens is inside of one of these environments, if you choose to deploy a Kubernetes environment, Rancher will actually implement what we call system services, but there are a number of containers that make up the operational functions for this new Kubernetes cluster that's getting deployed. So inside of an environment, you can launch as many hosts as you like, build as big or small of a Kubernetes cluster as you want. You can split those up between different platforms or data centers, just like you can with Rancher. But as you sort of scale this up, Rancher will start by implementing sort of the Kubernetes master functions, which are the purple pieces here on the left, like the Kubernetes controller, etcd, the scheduler, the API server. We'll deploy those out, and we'll distribute them across the hosts, scale them up as you need more of them across multiple hosts. For each node then, Kubernetes has a couple of container agents that get deployed on those nodes, like the kubelet and the proxy. So we'll automate deploying those containers on the hosts. And then we also deploy a few Rancher services like our DNS service, our networking agent, our metadata service that we would normally deploy on these. So basically all of these containers will get started, will become effectively processes running on the host as new hosts are added. And they're basically baked into this system services layer that, by and large, you can manage it, you can look at it within Rancher, but we sort of hide it, behind some configuration stuff so that, most of the focus for a user will be on deploying actual applications, pods, replication controllers, services, etc. So think of this system services layer as part of what Rancher is managing and deploying for you when you say, give me a Kubernetes environment. The next piece is, just to kind of explain the concepts of what's happening inside of Kubernetes, is you'll start by provisioning pods. Pods are the smallest unit within a Kubernetes environment. They're basically analogous to a container, though sometimes it could be a tightly coupled group of containers and volumes that make up this sort of execution and piece. If you're familiar with Rancher, this is sort of like a container and or a service with a with maybe potentially a sidekick attached to it. But so a couple of containers can make up a pod, and then each pod will have a unique ID, and Rancher will then allocate an IP for that pod on the Rancher network if you use Rancher's networking. So effectively, these pods are the lowest common denominator inside of a Kubernetes cluster. They get scheduled, and when you want to run more of them or you want to scale one up, you set up a replication controller. So within Rancher, you'll come in and create a replication controller for a specific pod with some selectors, and these replication controllers will define how many copies of a given pod are launched. So these are managed by the Kubernetes controller plane, and it works with the scheduler to basically at all times see, do I need more, do I need fewer, how many pods are out there. So this is basically like setting the scale of your service, of how many of these nodes you want to deploy, how many of these pods you want to deploy. So within sort of a Rancher environment, the way to think of this is, you'll start by creating a pod or having a pod that contains some container, and then you'll deploy a replication controller for your application, which will tell Kubernetes how to schedule and deploy these. So Kubernetes schedules them, deploys them into the cluster, and however many of these replication controllers you want, you'll set up. And when you want to start another application or maybe another service within your application, you'll create a separate replication controller for that spins up a set of different pods with typically a different container image. So inside of your environment, you'll schedule these replication controllers, and they will execute deployment of the pods, which are made up of containers, across your cluster running in this Rancher environment. The next piece, though, is once you have these pieces together, you sort of need to be able to talk to them as a group. And so there's a concept called services in Kubernetes, which defines a cluster IP for a group of pods. And so if you have a Redis cluster made up of 3 pods, you can say, okay, this is a service, I want to talk to this service consistently. So clusters are then given an IP, which is separate from the container IP or the pod IP, and it's allocated on a whole separate subnet. So you see in Rancher, that's a 10.43 IP address. It's allocated to a cluster, and each of these, into a service. And each of these services are made up of, pods or multiple pods, which then will have containers in them. So you can sort of see the visibility in Rancher of services with pods that are nested that then have containers associated with them. And fundamentally, these IPs are actually running on some of those system services like the proxy. So each pod will have its own IP that's on the private network, so it'll have like a 1042 IP. And when you create a service, you're creating a service IP, which will sit at the proxy level, and is deployed on this other subnet, but then connects over the private network to all of these pod IPs. And when you need another one, you create a different service because it's a new IP and connects to those. And this is sort of the point probably before you start implementing your load balancing and such, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go through the demo. So this is really just kind of trying to lay out some of the basic concepts of how to deploy applications within Kubernetes. Everything is really defined by these configuration files, the replication controller, the service controller, and there's it's still a very rapidly moving project, so there's a lot of new capabilities that are getting introduced with each release of Kubernetes. So one of the things we really took in mind when we were doing this is how to make it as simple as possible to upload and edit and modify these configuration files that specify what you want to deploy in a replication controller, in a pod, and a service. The other thing we did is, from the Kubernetes UI, we wanted to give, simple web access to kubectl, which is basically the command line for managing your cluster. We are implementing Rancher's access control around this. So as you, kind of access the kubectl, we don't put it out necessarily on a public IP or expose it. You can access it through, unless you choose to, you can access it directly through the through the command line or through the Rancher UI. So we've exposed that out and used that to make it easy to deploy to Kubernetes, whatever you want to do. So really trying to get as native as possible an experience, but maintaining the controls and the standardization that a lot of people are looking for with the platform level that Rancher is still dealing with. So that covers most of what I wanted to talk about and kind of overview for you. I'm sure it looks like there was a ton of questions that were firing in while I was talking. So I think someone asked if we could get shirts. How do we get shirts? So I'm sure there's a way we can get shirts out to people, but we have to figure out a good contest for them. But what I want to do now is I want to turn it over to Darren and let Darren get started on his demo. And as he's going, I'll be responding to some of your questions that came in over chat. I'll try to publish those out to the whole audience, but I'll also try and address some of them and ask Darren to address a few. Darren, are you all set up and ready to go with your demo environment?
I sure hope so.
All right, great. Well, you are the presenter now. I've just switched you over, so feel free to take off.
All right, great. So today, basically, what I'm going to be demoing is, just basically getting the Kubernetes environment up and running, and then just deploying application, and then just showing the various things that we put into the UI and different features, just to make it easier to work with Kubernetes. While I'm going through this, please ask questions. Shannon will be, going through them. That really makes it kind of that's the funnest part for me. These meetups is, fielding all the questions. This demo is not actually going to be super long, so hopefully it won't be too bad here. So what I'm going to start doing, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to enable Kubernetes. So when you install Rancher, I'm not going to go through the whole installation of Rancher. It's actually really simple. Rancher is just packaged as a container. It's just Docker run Rancher server. That gets the server up. And then you start adding hosts, which I'll show you in just a second. So once you have the Rancher server up, as Shannon was talking about before, we group everything in environments. And so this is kind of the home page here. If I go to infrastructure, you can see I already have 3 hosts. So I kind of added those already. If this was a fresh installation, there'd be no hosts, and you'd have to add one manually. You do that either by just running this Docker command on one of the hosts, or you can use a Docker machine driver. We support as many as we can, and very shortly we're going to add the ability to just you can add additional drivers since they made them pluggable. But for this demo, I already have 3 hosts up and running. So these are just 3, 16, 15 gigabyte machines running in Google Cloud. Again, Rancher will run anywhere. This could be bare metal, VMware, on a cloud. So, the fact that it's Google and we're doing Kubernetes actually has nothing to do with anything. It's just the easiest for me to spin up this environment. So, so the very first thing you're going to do to So the very first thing you want to do to enable Kubernetes is this basically it's done at the environment level. So when you go in here, we can add a new environment. So when you add an environment, this is what Shannon kind of already showed in his slide, you can select which cluster management you want. Cattle, which is what we've always had, or you can do Kubernetes, so that's what we're demoing today, and then Swarm is actually coming very soon. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cancel that because I don't want to add a new environment because I already set up some hosts. So I'm just going to go and edit my current environment and say, I just want to switch to Kubernetes. And you can do that. You can actually switch back and forth, but of course it deletes the orchestration stack and everything. But so here we're just going to go and we're going to switch to Kubernetes. So I'm going to go and click Save. Now this is going to take a little bit of time to actually, because what is going to happen now is we're going to go and start deploying the Kubernetes stack, which is the API server, the controller, etcd, the kubeless, kubeproxy, controller, and then the aspects that we need. So if I go over here on the infrastructure, so you can start seeing, we're starting to deploy things. We've got etcd coming up here, Kubernetes, our networking agent. So slowly these things are going to all deploy out. It might take a couple minutes, but let me show you. If I go over here to the stacks, you can see this is what we're actually deploying is this full set of all these services. This is just to get Kubernetes running. So if I go and look at the graph view, it gives me a little better picture so you get an idea of what we have here. So these are all still coming up, but basically, so I've got etcd running as one container. I've got Kubernetes, which is, we've named it Kubernetes here, but this is really the API server. And then you have all the various components that are talking to the API server. So you have the kubelet, kube control D, which is something we've added in to make the UI work really nice. We have the scheduler, Rancher Kubernetes agent, which is, again, something just kind of bind Kubernetes to Rancher so we can process events and things like that. We've got the kubeproxy, and then the controller master. And you can see these are all coming up. Now, if you notice, we've got like one of these, one of the Rancher Kubernetes, one of the scheduler, the kubelet, and the proxy. We have 3 of those. So those are scheduled per host. So the idea here is Rancher, will deploy and manage the Kubernetes stack for you. So the whole control plane. Right now, it's kind of a simple setup, and so we're still working on getting the full HA setup, but it shouldn't take very long. We'll get that such that you'll have an entire HA configuration of Kubernetes with HA etcd. Basically, what you'll be able to do within on the infrastructure side is, if I've deployed, let's say I have 50 hosts, you're most likely going to want to dedicate a couple of those hosts to the control plane, which would be where like etcd and the API server, those things are running. So you would just basically label those hosts and say, okay, that's my control plane, and then run the rest of everything. Run all the workload on these other nodes. And so that's just through simple labeling. And then we'll manage Rancher will basically manage the scaling of the services and as they go down.
Yeah, Darren, let me stop you for just a second. There were some good questions that came in on this topic of creating your Kubernetes environment. The first one was Max. Max asked, Max Kai, I think I'm saying that right. He asked if it was possible to specify Kubernetes version when he installs it on Rancher, or if we make that choice for them.
Yeah, so right now we just have 1.2. I mean, honestly, the amount of effort we're putting into this, and because Kubernetes has a whole heck of a lot of plug-in points and stuff like that, and we're doing a lot to plug in and making this as seamless and as nice as possible, that we will probably just stick with one version. So right now what you're getting is 1.2 alpha 8, because 1.2 is going to be coming out very soon, so we went with that. So I don't think right now we're going to give the option of a different version.
Because in a lot of ways, guys, this is it's basically a distribution of Kubernetes that we're supporting and putting into Rancher as part of Rancher. So you will be maintaining the version, but also probably upgrading it over time for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
I just want to say, also as part of the management, is that we will be doing that. We will, so there's a new, basically if there's a new patch available or something like that, when you go into the system stacks section here, you'll see a button that says like update available, and you click that and we'll upgrade Kubernetes for you, so you get the newer version of the control plane.
There was another question that was, what's the minimum number of nodes you need to actually run Kubernetes? Can you run this on a single node?
Yeah, single node. You just need one node.
You just need one node, and everything can come up there, and then you can add nodes.
Yeah, you can run the whole stack, and so basically what will happen is like this is what I was saying is we're still ironing out the HA, because what we're trying to make it do is basically if you have one node, then you get basically like a one node etcd. But if you have 3 nodes, not 2 but 3, then we can actually do like a 3-node setup of etcd. So it's basically if you start out with just one node, then you have, it'll all run on one node. It's just not, obviously highly available.
Mm-hmm. There was a question from Dongyi Yang. He asked if the Rancher's Kubernetes agent is running on each node or only on the kube master. From the stack view, it looked like it was only on the master.
Right. So there's a couple things here. What we don't show in the infrastructure view is actually our normal Rancher agent. So there is always a Rancher agent that runs on every single host. So that's just something we just need for Rancher, just to be able to communicate with Docker to do various things. So the Kubernetes agent, now this is just basically a very small piece of code that allows us to basically pick up Kubernetes events, because we're doing some things like, where we're doing the networking and we're doing the DNS for Kubernetes. So, we need to watch for changes and different things. And so that's what that Rancher Kubernetes agent is. And there's just one of those that's deployed that's talking to the API server. In an API setup, there would be like 2 or 3 of those deployed. But it's not per node.
Great. So hopefully also, Maverick was asking about Kubernetes clustering and stuff. Hopefully we've covered that enough. So I'll let you keep moving.
Yeah. So in theory, if everything worked, everything shows green, we've got all of our services up, we should have Kubernetes up and running. So I think people have already dropped into the UI. That's funny. Okay. So basically, let me just refresh, make sure everything's working. So let me just kind of give you an overview of what we have here. So again, our intention was first, we want to get Kubernetes up and running, just give you a Kubernetes environment, and as raw as possible. We don't want to get in the way of if you're a Kubernetes expert, you know the tricks and whatnot, we want to give you as much access as possible. And so it's kind of reflected in the way we've set up some of the things. It's there's no layer on top of this. So at the very top here, basically, we have the environment. This is the Rancher term. So an environment basically maps to a Kubernetes cluster. So if I wanted to set up more and more clusters, basically I would just go and add a new environment. And those environments can, you can have one that's Kubernetes, one that's, not Kubernetes. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so now this is where we get into the Kubernetes concepts. We have the Kubernetes namespaces. So right now we're using the default. That's, by default where things go. But there's also the kube system one, which is kind of like that hidden namespace. But you can go and create more namespaces, so if you deploy an application, put it into its own namespace. So here we have our basic, we've got services, RCs, replication controllers, pods, and then kube control. So we wanted to make it as easy as possible to run kube control, because honestly, what we see as the vast majority of what people know of Kubernetes is really kube control. That's the primary way people interact with it. So we wanted to make sure that was as simple and easy to get up and running and use. And so if you just click in here, this is, right now I don't have authentication turned on this page. But if I did, then this is basically fully authenticated. So, we open up the shell and you can just start typing commands here. So I can say get node. You can see we've got my 3 nodes here. They're already added in. But if I go and I say, click this button up here for generate config, this gives me my kube config. You can see the server here basically is going through our authenticated layer. So it basically hits pretty much, it hits Rancher. We take the access keys. We're just using basically basic auth. We hits Rancher. We use the keys to authenticate. Then based off the authentication, we determine which environment you're going to, and then we route the request to the proper API server. So if you had multiple environments, it will go to the right place. So if this works right, let me go here to shell, and I'm going to edit my kubeconfig. Let me delete that. Okay. Kube control, get node, M3. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I put in that configuration, kube config. Now I can do kube config and start interacting, with my Kubernetes environment. So let's, just do some things. So basically, the UI. If you've already used Rancher, UI behaves, kind of how you would expect it to. Everything is dynamic changes. So we should be able to say like kube control run image nginx. So this is just going to deploy nginx. So you can see automatically we get an RC that pops up here. If I open this up, you can say, okay, here's the pod. So we got this pod running. Here's the host IP. Expand one more layer. Then here's the actual container. And then we hook up all kind of the regular actions that we already have in Rancher. So if I wanted to, I could just drop into a shell and do something within that container, or look at the logs of that container. There are none here because I haven't hit that. But you can also see, so this is running on this host. If I go over to the infrastructure view, I'll also see that here's my Kubernetes namespace default. That's that pod that's running. So I can get that, basically, so that pod's up and running. Now if I go here, let me back to my command line. If I just say, okay, now I want to scale that, scale replicas to RC nginx. Right. So now that's, basically that's scaled up. So I got another container deploying. Take a second. So you can see here's a pod IP, host IP. So this is the kind of the basic overview of kind of what we're doing here. Basically what we've built from the UI, the authentication. Honestly, I think this is probably one of the easiest ways to get Kubernetes up and running. So let me show you actually deploying a real application.
Hey, Darren, before you jump
Sure.
jump in there, I have a bunch of questions that have been coming in that may be useful to kind of address now. And feel free to ask more while I'm talking, guys. I'll answer them as we go. But one of the questions was from Manoj. He asked if Kubernetes is having the proxy and Rancher having the network agent, don't these kind of overlap? Are there any plans to prepare customized Rancher network agents specific to Kubernetes? Do you want to talk about that? And Manoj, feel free, if I didn't quite get the gist of your question, to ask a follow-up.
Sure, yeah. So there's no real overlap here. So basically, the Rancher networking is providing the networking layer. So typically, if you were to go and deploy Kubernetes today, you might pick up Flannel, to do networking, or Weave. So basically, we've just plugged in Rancher networking, so it just kind of automatically happens for you. So the Rancher networking is completely independent of the proxy, the Kubernetes proxy, because the kube proxy basically handles the service IPs. We handle basically the pod IPs and routing the traffic for the pod IPs. Right now, our networking is still it's the same approach that we've been using for Docker. Basically, now that Kubernetes seems to be adopting CNI, we will be creating a proper CNI plugin and make Rancher networking just a CNI plugin. So everything will be kind of fully proper. We're really not trying to, again, like what I'm saying is we're really not trying to get in the way of Kubernetes, do something unique and different with it. We just want to be able to manage it the best way, and so we're trying to do things in the way you're supposed to, I guess.
There's 3 questions from Daniel, Clement, and Jay that I just shared back to everyone because they kind of all hit on the same topic, which was just which was kind of like, okay, I think most of these people, I think all three of them, I think, have been using Rancher and sort of familiar with Rancher's way of deploying applications and scheduling things, and we're asking, okay, so why would I use one versus the other? What's the difference between Cattle and Rancher? How do I make it? How do I choose when to use different ones? And they seem to do some of the same thing. So let me try and talk about that, because I think it goes to some of why we built this in. I think from our perspective, the choice of clustering and application management software is only going to get more rich. I mean, we feel there's not one way to define an application, describe it, and deploy it. And it's between Swarm and Kubernetes and Mesos potentially in the future. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to manage your hosts and to deploy applications. What we found is that in a lot of organizations, there's not even going to be a standard. You're going to find that different teams, just like they pick different approaches to a database, or just like they pick different frameworks for defining their writing code, they're going to pick the tools that work best. And at Rancher, we want to build a platform that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you're going to place. I mean, a lot of people compare Rancher to a PaaS and say, but it's definitely not what we really are trying to build, because Rancher is designed to be pretty flexible. It's designed to be a framework for managing and controlling how, as an organization, you deploy containers, or for dealing with sprawl and visibility and access control policies and audit logs and controls that tell you what happened and who did it. And to do that, you have to be able to consume all the different types of container management that people and teams are going to use. I mean, we believe in DevOps. We believe in teams being close to the technology, making choices that are right for their application. And so, we think there's just value in these things. We're big fans of Kubernetes. We think that there's some really cool concepts in it. We like the direction it's going, and we anticipate it being a big part of this ecosystem for a long time. And so, we want to support it, and we want to make it a core component within Rancher. So for a while, if you guys have been using Rancher before, you might have seen it as part of a catalog where you could, we had a catalog item. In fact, I think Elizabeth asked a question earlier about, is this different than that? And it is. It's much different than that. That was sort of a very first sort of rollout of kind of how do you just stand up a Kubernetes cluster. This is a lot different. This is a fully baked in distribution of Kubernetes that's part of Rancher. So the whole concept here is making it fully available as a real Kubernetes cluster that is maintained, and you can spin up as many of these as you want. And if another team wants to use Swarm, good on them. If somebody wants to use Cattle and kind of get down to all of that functionality, great. I mean, in terms of choosing one versus the other, it's they're very, in a lot of ways, they're very similar. They have a lot of similar overlapping capabilities. So it may just be based on choice and what you're interested in. In doing. So I would definitely say, we're going to continue to work on Cattle and continue to work on Kubernetes and continue to work on Swarm, and Rancher is going to support all of those. So it's really almost another layer above the individual cluster. It's more like a container service, and that's really the idea we've always had, is that Rancher is a container service, and then individual clusters are container clusters and or host clusters that you can use to deploy your applications on. Okay, hopefully that answers all those questions, and they were all really good ones. Darren, you were going to go and deploy an application. Do you want to jump onto that?
Sure, yeah. So I was just going to do basically your standard guestbook application. Kind of nothing bad, just if you've seen this before, but it gives you a basic idea of what it look like to use Rancher, and we'll talk about the load balancing a little bit too, which is kind of the last feature I haven't shown yet. So, okay, so when you go in here, so I haven't actually shown you, okay, like if you click on a replication controller, or if you click on a service, you can drill and get a little bit more information about it. If you go to containers, this is still, basically our container view we had before. Now, if I have like an existing replication controller and I want to edit it, and so we actually just open up the basically a text field here. So you can just go and say, okay, I want 3 replicas, save that. You can see the replica has changed to 3, and I got 3 pods running here. So we really went back and forth on this was because, as I was saying, like our idea is we just didn't really want to get into the way of people who want to use Kubernetes, and so what we took the approach at first is we're actually just going to make a lot of the UI kind of text file based because that's how a lot of people are used to interacting with Kubernetes. And so if I actually go and say like add RC, it's just a text file. We implemented like the full dialogue and everything, but we're like, well, what if we missed an option or whatever? We didn't want to get in the way. So we decided we'll start with this. With everything with Rancher, we released this stuff early. We're trying to get feedback, see what people think. And so, if people are interested in, more of a dialogue wizard type view, then we can put that in there. But with kind of going with like a text file approach, then it was, we kind of felt that was like the most natural thing to Kubernetes users. Any example you see is going to have those files and whatnot. So, like if I want to go and deploy, so let's say like we go deploy this this Redis service here. So I have like the Redis master. We'll do the controller first. Redis master controller. Basically, I'm just going to copy and paste this whole. Shoot. Okay, I think it just copies automatically. So you can go and say add service. This is the right one. Master. Oh no, it's controller. Add RC. Okay, I'll actually tell you something. Like the way we implemented these little dialogues here, technically you can put whatever the heck you want in here. You can put anything that kubectl create takes. So even though it says add replication controller, you could actually put like kind list and have 15 things in here. It doesn't actually matter. Like Kubernetes basically in the backend just figures it all out anyways. But so if I go create, so that's going to basically deploy out my Redis master. So this is going to start coming up. So I'm not going to go through and deploy each one of these manually that way. I'm just going to basically just do it from kubectl, just do kubectl create. So I think I can just probably do this kubectl create. Okay, let's see. Created that one already existed, created. Okay, so basically this whole app should be coming up now. So you can see I have this front end RC, the Redis master, the Redis slave. From services perspective, I have the Redis master, slave, and then the front end. And then I believe some of these are still coming up. Let's give them a little bit of time. Now, if I go and I look at, in order to access this application, you're going to want to hit this front end service. And so you can see here's the cluster IP, but obviously the cluster IP is just available within the cluster. So if I want to expose this out to the world, I really need to make this a load balancer. In fact, if you go and you look at the front end service, the example here, they actually say like, if cluster supports it, you should do type load balancer, then it's exposed out to the world. So what we're going to do, just want to check, yeah, all the pods are running. So what we're going to do is we're just going to edit this here, and because I deployed it as basically as a cluster IP, but we want to deploy this service as a load balancer. So when I do that, so now you can see the type is load balancer. What this is going to do is it's going to plug into the Rancher load balancing. So we still need to work a little bit on the UI here to kind of tie these together. But if you go into the system stacks here for Rancher, this is kind of the Rancher system stuff. You can see we've actually deployed a load balancer here, and this load balancer is running on this port 80. So basically, so this is my guestbook app. So now it's exposed out onto the internet, and basically this app is running now. So basically you'll be able to leverage like Rancher scheduling and load balancing capabilities within Kubernetes. We're still actually doing a good amount of work here to make this even better, because Rancher already does hosting path-based routing, SSL termination, SNI, a bunch of nice features for the load balancing. And in Kubernetes 1.2, they have ingress, so we'll be adding an ingress controller for Rancher, so you can actually just use the native Kubernetes ingress description to do the hostname path-based routing. But still on top of that, we have like SSL termination and other things. So you'll probably still want to interact with Rancher to do a little bit more configuration and whatnot. But basically, we just tie directly in. So we're still working on the UI to make this a little more obvious what's going on here. But when I created that load balancer service, it did create a basically a Rancher load balancer. So yeah, so I mean that's, as I said, this is not like a super long demo. That's basically the whole thing. So I've been within the last 20 minutes here, basically deployed a Kubernetes cluster. This is a fully fully scalable networking, everything set up. Got an application deployed, exposed it out to the internet. So hopefully,
yeah, that's great.
Hopefully, like what you see.
For working so really hard on this, and I mean, that may be the first time we finished our demo before the top of the hour. So good job. We're cruising along, and nothing exploded. A couple things have come in. A couple questions I want to just throw back at you. Max and Nippon both asked sort of the same question about how does Kubernetes get reference of private registries registered in Rancher, or I think Max said, can we configure Kubernetes to connect to a private Docker repo? Do you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, so right now we're not doing anything around registries. So like in Rancher, we have like the ability, like if you can go to infrastructure registries, you can go and you can add like registries and credentials, and we manage all those credentials. We have not connected the two yet. Like we will definitely be doing that. So the behavior of Kubernetes right now is the out-of-the-box behavior, which is basically it looks at the host, at the Docker config. So basically, you kind of have to do like a Docker login on each host to use private registries. But we will be, I believe, I can't remember the name of the hook, but there is a hook in Kubernetes that we can plug into, so we can provide the credentials. So this is, to be honest, as you're saying, why you choose one or the other, I think if people want like Cattle, Kubernetes, or Swarm, it's largely a matter of taste. But it's exciting. Kubernetes, a lot of, they really do have a lot of neat hooks and plugins that we can get into, such that, people choose Kubernetes, we can still provide like this rich Rancher experience, and you get like the kind of the standard Kubernetes experience too. So we're actually pretty excited about the ways we're going to integrate with Kubernetes going forward.
Great. A couple other questions that came in. Dave Favorman asked if, how would Rancher/Kubernetes DNS work with a corp on-site build which already has DNS services from Infoblox?
Right. So yeah. So we're still basically the idea with the Rancher DNS is I'm not exactly, so basically what we've done with our Rancher DNS is like typically when you deploy Kubernetes, if you want DNS service discovery, the DNS-based service discovery, you deploy SkyDNS. And so, we basically already do DNS-based service discovery with Rancher DNS so we just figured, well, it's much easier to just put that in there, and the way we manage it, it's a little bit more horizontally scalable. So it's really for DNS-based service discovery, but then the DNS always still forwards up to an upstream DNS server, so you can get like your corporate DNS. So I'm not terribly sure like the question if what you have is actually a different system which actually implements the Kubernetes style DNS lookups. So it's like when you go into, let me see if I can do something here. Oops. Switch environments, or what happened here? Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. That's a whole different environment. Okay, so if I go here and let's say I drop into this Nginx pod here, execute shell, I can just say like curl HTTP. Oh shoot, hold on, I forgot what's the name. Oh crap. I forgot what the name of the service was. The service, service is just called frontend, obviously. Okay. So if I go back to the container, drop into a shell of the container. I should just be able to say, just curl's not there. We'll just say ping. Ping's going to fail because it doesn't actually do ping, but you'll see that it'll resolve to an IP. Ping front end. So basically, this is the Kubernetes style that it sets up of basically service, namespace, SVC, cluster, local. So basically what Rancher DNS is doing is just supporting this DNS setup and forwarding it to, making sure it resolves to the cluster IP.
And is there any reason you would choose to use the Kubernetes DNS? Nikhil sort of asked, is there any reason you'd use that instead of the Rancher DNS? Choose one over the other, or does it really not matter? It's just,
well, it doesn't really matter. So like so Kubernetes technically doesn't by default ship a DNS implementation. It's an add-on. So they have like a cluster add-on which is SkyDNS. And so if someone wants to use SkyDNS, by all means, you can still deploy SkyDNS yourself. We just didn't want to manage yet another component. And one of the nice things that we have with Rancher DNS is, since Rancher is, we're managing multiple environments, we have more visibility to things such that we can do, integrate service discovery, kind of things external or cross environment. There's just different types of things that we're working on right now where people, they have set up multiple environments that are owned by different teams, but they still want service discovery to work across, and then they want to set up access controls and whatnot. And so, there are some interesting things we can do there. But again, if you just want to use SkyDNS, you want to deploy it yourself, by all means you can. We really don't want to get in your way of doing that.
Great. So another question that came in, Max was asking if Kubernetes in Rancher supports volume types like GCE persistent PDs or AWS EBS volumes. Any comment on that, Darren?
Yeah. So basically we're still giving you a out of the box Kubernetes installation. So the volume drivers and everything should still work fine. So if you're in Google, you should be able to use like the persistent volume claims and everything. Right now, we don't have any specific UI around like PVCs. Hopefully, we'll build that out. There's like in 1.2, there's a lot more concepts like daemon sets and jobs that we'd like to build out the rest of the UI for and everything that we just haven't done yet. But so volumes, you should be able to use them. We haven't done anything specific there. On the Rancher cattle side, we do a lot with storage, and so we're hoping to bring a lot of that storage into Kubernetes. We just haven't quite gotten there yet because we do a lot of sophisticated storage scheduling and stuff like
that. Thanks, Darren. There was a question from Luis Paul. He asked if we would be supporting cloud-specific features for Kubernetes clusters such as AWS, EC2, autoscaling groups.
Well, so let's see. So with Kubernetes, there's a concept of a cloud provider, and so you can say the cloud provider is Amazon or GCE. So basically, we've implemented Rancher as the cloud provider. So Rancher is designed to be basically like cloud independent. So if you want to take advantage of the specific cloud provider for EC2 or GCE, we're still kind of figuring out how that will be possible. So I guess that's kind of yet to be seen. So we were looking at I was just looking at how we can basically do the adding more pods, adding more hosts on demand. Through the Kubernetes as a new feature for losing the name. They have there's a horizontal pod scaling, but then additionally they have you can add more nodes as the capacity. Because we're just kind of looking at that, trying to figure out how to make that work. I mean, I know there's different approaches where you can use auto scaling groups. If you just want to use Amazon directly, basically what you can do is you can still set up an auto scaling group, and then the auto scaling group as it launches. You just put the command to register it with Rancher, and then it adds it into Rancher, which will then add it into the Kubernetes cluster. So then your Kubernetes cluster will scale with the auto-scaling group. So there are still ways you can do it, but it's not like that one specific feature that comes from the cloud provider. So we're still working on that one.
Thanks, Darren. There was another question. Brian Tolles asked if Rancher was going to be adding cron type functionality, or are you going to be leaving that to something like Kronos? Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? I know there's cron functionality inside of Kubernetes that's also being worked on, sort of job-like scheduling. So maybe chat about that.
Yeah, so I mean, Kubernetes has jobs. I'm trying to think. I'm not super familiar. Like, I know the intention of the jobs would be able to do cron-like things. I'm not super familiar with like if all the cron stuff is implemented. So if Kubernetes has it, then we'll do it. You should be able to use it. On the Rancher side, we have no like short-term, nothing basically on the roadmap of adding like cron-like functionality. Basically, what users are doing is you just basically, like within Rancher, this is not Kubernetes specific. Within Rancher, you can just deploy a container that we automatically give it credentials, and then you just write, you can actually just use cron itself to basically just, make API calls to do things to Rancher to deploy new things or whatever. So we haven't had like a huge demand on adding like cron-like functionality to Rancher.
There was a question from Axel Bach. He asked if it was possible, or if we were thinking about doing something where you could automatically recreate a system, including all pods, replication controllers, services. Currently, it seems like it's not fully complete. You can't add hosts to a Rancher environment in one go without checking into the Rancher UI first. Are you thinking of any ways to sort of say, almost like you can deploy an entire compose file or stack, where you just say like to bring up this whole system, this environment of pods, reps, and service controllers? Any thoughts on that, Darren?
Yes. So basically, that's coming with so Compose v2 just came out. So this is like not really Kubernetes specific. This is like a little more just Rancher general. It's like, so Rancher we use, we have a tool, Rancher Compose, which basically uses the Docker Compose syntax to deploy and manage your services and stuff. And so we've tried to keep that tool as compatible with Docker Compose as much as we can. So Compose v2 just came out, which is a different format, which basically allows you to add different types. And so what Docker has today is services, networks, and volumes. But since they have the kind of the structure in place to add more types, we will support all of the types that Rancher supports, which will include node/hosts and Kubernetes things, which will be RCs and stuff like that. So basically, you can have one file and just say Rancher up, and it will create the entire thing. For GA,
including the hosts, correct?
Yeah, and the host would basically be provisioned through the Docker machine drivers. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so if you want to put all the parameters that the Docker machine driver needs, so we're doing a lot of work on the. We're trying to get things ready for our GA product, and one of the things there is the CLI, like really ramp up the CLI to do a lot more than what it can today. So that will be a pretty exciting feature that we have coming out pretty soon.
Great. There was another question that was asked actually a long time ago. I apologize for not getting into it earlier, but it was about whether Kube CLI apps would still work. So something that talks to the Kube CLI. Does that? Do you want to chat about that?
Yeah. So that we basically kind of demonstrate like. We're doing it through the web browser or whatever, but also, I'm just writing from the command line. So obviously anything, kubectl just works. To be honest, this is probably the kubectl that comes from kubecontrol that comes from the Google Cloud tools. Yeah, because you can see here's the client is actually 117, but the server is 12 alpha, whatever. So yeah, so all the command lines. So you shouldn't have, once you get going back to kind of the CLI, the intention of what we're going to support is we'll have like basically rancher space queue control. So, the rancher CLI, you can just say rancher's queue control and then it will just work. Or the second option is what I already demoed here, which is, grab the configuration and set up queue control. So if you don't want to go through our kind of custom command line tool, which, we feel makes it a little easier to interact with the system, you can still just get the queue control configuration and put that in there. And, you can leverage all of queue control and set up different environments with different credentials and switch contexts and do all that stuff.
Darren, next question was just about, like, David asked this, and he was just asking whether or not Kubernetes itself had any UI. So it was more of a question like, doesn't it have an UI, or does it have a UI? And I think maybe you can talk a little bit about, the state of UI around Kubernetes, because I think there's different projects, but it's a bit of an open space right now.
Yeah. So I mean, there's some proprietary products, but largely there's 2 open source projects that are available right now. One is the Kubernetes UI, and the other one's called Dashboard. So Kubernetes UI, so basically, I think that was originally developed by the Cosmetic guys, and they donated that to Kubernetes. But it seems to be the focus these days is on Kubernetes Dashboard, and that's going, it's moving forward. Hopefully that will get richer. I mean, it's not, it's definitely not complete. So there's really, I don't think from the open source perspective, there's really great UIs available for Kubernetes. But again, it's like if there was like a great UI, like let's say the Kubernetes Dashboard, like that one takes off, by all means, we'd love to just integrate or use it or contribute to it. Because again, we feel like we're adding more than just a nice UI to this. We're doing the whole authentication, we're deploying it, we're managing, we're doing upgrades of the stack, the networking. So UI is not like the critical thing, but at Rancher we really wanted to make things as simple as possible, give a good user experience, and so we decided to build what we have here.
There was another question from Nipam. He asked if Rancher was planning to help manage certificates for Kubernetes clusters and eventually on containers too. Do you want to address that?
Well, I mean, Kubernetes has its own secrets management type functionality. So you can just use Kubernetes secrets to manage some of that stuff. Plus, they have like config maps to do some configuration management. And so I don't see like right now that we're going to do anything specific for certificate management for Kubernetes. I'm definitely like if there's something like specifically you're looking for, like put in a feature request. I know we're trying to do other certificate management things, like there's a lot of requests for like getting Let's Encrypt working in Rancher, so we can integrate it with our load balancer. On the Swarm side, Swarm is all certificate based, so we're doing certificate management on Swarm, but honestly within Kubernetes, not seeing much that we kind of have in the roadmap right now.
Great. There was one more question about the networking in terms of how it works underneath Kubernetes. So Nikhil was asking if every container in a pod was networked together, can pods talk to each other? Is there network isolation between pods and services? What's the, there was an earlier question about whether you could talk across clouds. Do you want to just talk maybe just for a minute more about the networking piece?
Yeah, and so the networking follows the Kubernetes networking model, and basically the idea of the Kubernetes networking model is every pod can directly talk to every other pod within the cluster. All that traffic, is isolated to the cluster, but it's not isolated between services. So it's kind of a wide open space by default, but it's still private to the cluster. So wherever you're, you're asking if it works across clouds. If your cluster spans clouds, then it will go across clouds. And so that's the way our networking works today is if I had set up a host in GCE and one in Amazon and one on bare metal packet, it would, that cluster, all the pods would be able to directly talk to each other. So the way our networking works under the hood is right now it's all IPsec based, that we're basically creating IPsec tunnels between the hosts. We have VXLAN coming, but right now IPsec works great because it gives you the encryption, works across clouds. So that's what it currently is.
Great. Okay, I think that's all the questions on Kubernetes. A few more about some Rancher related stuff, but I wanted to wrap up there for a minute, and thank you for going through all of that, Darren. We always try to just kind of quickly highlight the latest Rancher enhancements that have rolled out the last few weeks since we last did a meetup. In that time, we've had 2 dot releases, and there are a lot of questions about what the timing is for 1.0 and GA for Rancher. It's coming in the next month or so. So our current plan is for March. But you should still see a couple more releases between now and then as we continue to make changes and improve all sorts of things within Rancher. Darren, do you want to just walk through the 0.56 and 0.59 releases that came out recently?
Yeah. So I mean, our focus lately has really been on GA, improving quality, scalability, and then we had some major features landing, which was like Kubernetes, which is coming out in the next couple of weeks. Oh, just to let people know, what I'm demoing today is like just a dev build. We're really going to try to get an RC out this week, which will have all of this. We'll do our best to get that out.
Just so everyone, an RC is a release candidate release. It's not yet tested and finalized through all of our QA process, but it's think of it almost like an alpha level of a release.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm getting tons of people asking me, they just want to get a hold of it, play with it, or whatever, and so we will put that out there. So 0.56 was really a huge release in the fact that we completely revamped the underlying IPsec networking. We were using kind of an older technology, Raccoon. We switched to Charon, and then by doing this, we addressed a whole slew of issues that we had with the IPsec stuff, weird corner cases and stuff like that, because the newer implementation, besides being more secure and faster, also gives us a lot more control, and so we're able to better handle a bunch of really odd cases. So huge improvement in our networking. That is still, it was a massive change, and I think we've ironed out most of the kinks, but that was kind of an important thing to get in there before GA, so that we could really have a solid, kind of that bottom line of networking. I mean, there's quite a few UI enhancements. Like one of the things is the dark theme, which was a huge advocate for myself. We now have a dark theme. So there's this is kind of a smaller feature, health check action strategies. This is basically, by default, before if a health check was bad, we would go and delete the container. Now we have like some more health check actions where you can say like delete only if you have a quorum. Like specifically, we needed this for like managing things like SCD and Zookeeper, like systems that need to require. Like if you drop below a quorum, you don't want to just delete something because you're really in a bad state. So we respect quorum. There's also a strategy where you just don't do anything. There were some changes to metadata, which is just basically addressing the usability things, but we had to bump the API version for metadata because it did change the structure. In 0.59, this is kind of it was a big feature, but it's kind of for our really more advanced users. And this is basically retaining a container IP on upgrade. So there's now an option on a service that you can say, okay, retain the IP of this service. And the reason why this is needed is again for systems like Zookeeper or Hadoop and Spark, like systems, these clustered systems are kind of finicky about the IP changing. And so when you do an upgrade, let's say I upgrade the container, I've stuck all my data in a data volume and I upgrade the container. But when the container comes up, it comes up with a new IP. And so when you get the new IP, the clustering system goes, oh, that's a new node. I don't care about that data. I'll rebuild it or something. So to do really seamless upgrades, we actually had to maintain the IP of the container. And so that kind of keeps the identity of it within the clustered system. So that's for like our really advanced users that are managing some pretty complex applications in Rancher. So we added support for Docker 1.10, and the last thing was we split the Rancher catalog into like a community catalog and our library. So there'll be a Rancher validated set of templates, and then there's a community, which is just kind of people can put whatever they want, and it's up to the community to maintain it.
Thanks, Aaron. There was a bunch of questions that came in, so I'll kind of go through these in the order they came in. Jay asked a little while ago about if we were still working on supporting, or we were planning to work on supporting ECR. It was mentioned in one of the earlier meetups, so he was wondering if there was any update on that, or if there's any plans to support ECR directly.
No, right now we have nothing in the works to directly support ECR. Please put in like a feature request or issue if there's not one out there already. If we get enough people kind of +1ing, commenting on it, then we'll prioritize that. But right now, I know there's no specific work for like ECR or GCR, Google's container. Like, we're not doing anything specifically to interact with the kind of like those proprietary container registries.
Someone asked, what is ECR? So maybe you can just explain what it is.
I hope I don't get this wrong. So ECR is basically that's Amazon's container registry. And so basically it uses like the IAM policies and whatnot of what containers can be pulled. It's actually pretty cool. But we don't have any like specific, like honestly, I don't even know what it would take on Rancher side to integrate with that. Like, maybe it actually works right out of the box, but I'm not sure. If there's a question, I'm guessing it doesn't work. It's a pretty cool thing from Amazon, but we're not, we haven't integrated with that.
Mark had a couple questions, and I think they're common questions we hear about, so if that's worth bringing it up. He asked if the new 1.0 release is going to have HA out of the box for the Rancher management layer, or the Rancher services themselves. And you just mentioned that currently, you can build it, but it's a bit of heavy lifting to get it working. So, what do you want to just update on, sort of? Because I know this is an area we've been working on. What are some of the things you're doing to make HA for the Rancher management tier easier?
Yeah, so this is something near and dear to my heart. I'm working on this right now. We've always had an HA setup, but it is quite difficult to set up. So basically, it's kind of a required feature of GA that we have an easier HA setup. And so basically, the approach is going to be, today, if you do just a single node setup, it's just Docker run Rancher server. The HA setup, what we're trying to get it to is really, you set up 3 nodes and you do Docker run Rancher server. You specify what the kind of cluster IP is for that container. So you just do that 3 to 5 times across different nodes, and that's really it. And then when we do everything else for you, Rancher is we make it quite easy from the outside of what's going on, but in fact it's really about it's like 15 to 20 microservices, and so it's actually a pretty complicated thing at a large scale. But we're trying to make that as simple as possible, because that's it's kind of something we like pride ourselves on. It's just making this stuff really easy to do. So it's definitely coming in GA. I'm working on it, and I'm going to be pretty darn excited when it's done.
Cool. There was another question that came in. It was from Jonathan Demars. He just asked, what does added support for Docker 1.10 entail? Anything you can elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, every new version of Docker, it really. This is mostly, we just make sure that, like right now, it's just pretty much making sure that it works with 1.10. Each new version comes with a little caveats and whatnot. Actually, 1.10 is the best one performance-wise. There was some really major performance regressions in 1.8 and 1.9, A lot of that has been alleviated in 1.10, and then hopefully 1.11 will get even better. So we're seeing like our best, most scalable deployments running on 1.10 right now. So I'll tell you the major feature that we're not supporting right now is actually the ability to create multiple networks. We are working on that. It ends up surprisingly being a very complicated UX issue of like, what is a network? How does that work with service discovery? And so we're still kind of working through how to present it in the best way.
Great. There was a question, I think Juan Ignacio Donoso asked about if there's any time frame for the load balancer refactor. I think he mentioned a GitHub issue that was going on. I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, Darren. Otherwise, we'll probably have to answer offline.
Yeah, we're having an internal fight on whether or not that goes in GA or not. I really want it in GA, but I just don't know. I mean, we've got a lot of things that we have to get done. So we're trying to get it in GA. If it's not GA, it'll be right after GA. So again, the time frame for GA is right now we're shooting for March, end of March.
Great. Okay, I think there was one last question about Rancher OS version 4.3, just asking when it was going to be released. Do you have a time frame on that?
Oh man, this is me just dropping the ball. So Rancher OS is 0.4.3 has actually, like, we built it. We built the binaries and whatnot. There's actually quite a bit that changed under the hood around networking, PID1. There's a lot of things we revamped under the hood that need to be documented. So you can actually deploy 0.4.3 right now, and it has Docker 1.10.1. Like we'll be doing 0.4.4 next week. A lot of Docker 1.10.2. But so the thing is, it's like we built it, but it's held up on me doing documentation. So that one I just feel bad about. So I'm supposed to get that done tomorrow.
Okay, one last question. Doug just asked, is there any update on the status of Rancher VM, like functionality built into Rancher? Looking forward to Windows VM management via packet.net with Rancher. You want to?
Yeah, the VM functionality in Rancher, it is like if you go into the admin settings page, you can turn on VM support. And the UI is kind of bumpy. It's kind of, but I will tell you, there's a lot of work actually going on behind the scenes in Rancher on virtual machines. We don't talk a lot about it in the public because it really confuses people. Like VM containers, what the heck? How does this work? But I will say it is active. Rancher VM is very actively being worked on right now. Hopefully, I don't know at what point we're going to kind of be showing that kind of from the public. It's still all open source. None of this is like proprietary or anything. It's just we honestly just don't talk a lot about it.
Yeah, we managed to confuse people enough by jumping around, by doing Kubernetes, doing Swarm, doing Rancher, just trying to build something great that you guys are going to love. So hopefully we've covered most of your questions. I think one last question. Okay, last one. Is there any plans to support build packs in the near future? Paulo asked that question. Anything you'd add to that, Darren? Any plan to support build packs?
So Rancher, in the foreseeable future, will not have direct support for like build packs. Like our perspective is that that's starting to get a little bit more into the PaaS layer than we want to be. But build packs do work with Docker, with Kubernetes. You can find Docker images, where you take build packs and turn them into images and whatnot. So that route is still available to you, but we're not going to be. We have no, specific intention of right now of doing something specific to support that in Rancher.
Awesome. All right. So with that, I just a couple little housekeeping things. If you haven't already and you're interested in getting access to all this stuff, everything we do is open source, so you don't need to join the beta program. But if you join the beta program, we do give you access to special support information. We have trainings. We have a lot of cool things. So if you haven't already, sign up for the beta. You'll love it. There's no real downside. It's just about participating a little bit more and helping us stay in touch with you. So join the beta. Second thing, go to GitHub. This is an open source project. Everyone who participates in this stuff owns it. File issues, help us with the docs, participate. We want contributors. If you want to do something, help us make this stuff great. We love it, and we love all of the people who are so such a big part of what we're doing. The forums are equally useful. If you're not already using them and you're using Rancher, you're crazy. We've even put them into the product, so you can just find it on the help button now directly within the product. But the forums are amazing, and there are people out there all over the world who answer questions in the middle of the night all the time, and we can't thank you all enough. So thank you to everyone who's helping out other people get up to speed with this stuff. I think Rancher we just passed 600,000 polls from Docker Hub, so there's an overwhelming number of people who are asking for help and support, and it's great to have so many people out there using it and helping out each other. So please do that. File issues in GitHub. I mentioned this last time. We just rolled out a really great ebook that is on using CI/CD with Docker. I get this question every single day on Twitter or in email or something, which is, how do I sort of start to move my team towards doing continuous deployment with containers? And I think this is a fantastic book that really walks through. It's written by a couple really bright guys. It walks through how to do that. It's free. There's no downside. Just grab it, read it, comment on it, share it, share what you're doing, blog about it. There's always great new blogs coming out. So other than that, we'll be sending out link to recording of this afternoon or tomorrow, as always, and with some information on our next meetup. So hopefully we'll see you all there. And thanks again for all of your participation in the community. And hopefully this was great. So have a wonderful day, Darren. Thank you for doing such a great job on the demo. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.